Mr. Chairman, shall we just call things to order?
Yeah.
We got a heavy lift in front of us, and the Senate's going back in at 2. I don't know what your constraints are.
2 o'clock.
Yes, we're both on the same 2 o'clock page. We've had distributed a list of a lot of the topics that we've gotten so far. I don't necessarily say that that's exhaustive, but it's a pretty darn long list, Mr. Chairman. Typically, we've allowed people to weigh in on these topics a little bit from the audience. And then at the end, I would kind of like to pursue that the committee members would rank their, top topics and over the next couple of days, and then allow the co-chairman and I to kind of come up with a final list rather than trying to maneuver it with all of us. So, and then by way of being respectful of folks that are agency heads, Mr. Secretary of State, we've got other elected officials. We maybe should take up their topics first. And so.
Yep, sounds like a good plan to me, Co-Chairman.
Okay, well, I think, Mr. Secretary, that would be you first. If you can maybe summarize all your topics together. And probably what we're going to be looking for is more broad permission, and then we'll narrow in on more things. But to you, Mr. Secretary, thank you.
Okay.
Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I assume you want us to go through the ones that we proposed rather than our thoughts on the ones that others proposed, and we would come up on the other ones later?
Yes, please speak on the ones that
Okay.
you.
Yes.
Okay, so the first one is examining potential abuse of Wyoming LLCs by foreign entities. And this was also one brought by Representative Stith. This interim topic would examine potential for abuse of corporate entity formation in Wyoming by foreign entities for illicit purposes. While Wyoming prides itself on being one of the top 3 states for business in the country in terms of business filings, and I'm very prideful of that, there's growing concern that foreign entities may be taking advantage of Wyoming's corporate entity formation statutes for illicit purposes. And I want to be clear here that I take that very seriously. We also had a bill from Senator Case on this issue, and this issue raises the need for potential statutory reform to prevent potential abuses of Wyoming's corporate filing system by foreign entities. This has received support from several legislators, as I'm sure Chairman Case remembers. We had it over in the Revenue Committee. I think he was a big believer in that, our discussion in Lander last year, I just don't think it was the right time, but I want you to know that I'm prepared to take this on, and I think it's proper through a committee. I think we bring in some of the experts. I don't have any foregone conclusions. I know you don't, but I also think it's probably proper in this committee as well. You want to move on?
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay. The next one is school board members, same-day swearing in and serving. This was also brought by Representative Locke and Representative Haroldson. This was an issue that came about in Natrona County. Under current Wyoming statute, there's a little conflict. Wyoming statute 22-22-102 provides that a board of trustees term shall run for 4 years, beginning at 12 noon on the first day in December following the election. And then 21-3-106, oath of trustees provides that the trustees of each school district shall, within 10 days after receiving notification of their election or appointment and before assuming the duties of their offices, appear to be administered the oath. And then it's et cetera, et cetera. And this creates an ambiguity in which an elected trustee's term begins on December 1st under one statute, but within 10 days of the election under the other statute. And the statutory ambiguity should be cleared up to create statutory consistency. There was a bill, House Bill 235, that wasn't heard in committee. I don't think there was any reason for that other than lack of time. I think this is a pretty easy fix. LSO had come up with a way to fix this. I think the problem was that they were thinking about appointments needing to come into effect within 10 days. And so you just put or instead of and, I think, and then it kind of fixes it. They had it all worked out, and I think it's a pretty simple fix.
Okay, and questions? Keep going, Mr. Secretary.
Thank you. The next is the special district election vacancy issue. Representative Haroldson sponsored this topic. This proposal arises out of a situation that we were made aware of of a special district where an appointed member of a filled vacancy that was slated for election in the next election cycle in a special district was allowed to be extended to the following election cycle. And this issue may benefit from statutory clarification. We really did not have statutory clarification on this question. I know, Chairman Case, you have a love for the special district issue over the years. The special committee was before my time, but it's always interesting. And I think this one, it just would be good, a vacancy comes up and then the term's extended. I think it's a thing to study, so.
Thank you. Questions? Keep going.
All right, unaffiliated petition filing period. This was also sponsored by Representative Haroldson. I would ask this committee to consider studying and perhaps revising the independent candidate filing deadline. Under current law, an independent candidate must file his nominating petition not less than 70 days before a general election. This statute creates a situation where the actual date varies from year to year depending on when the general election is held. And I have a little bit of an issue with this, I think. In 2022, the period was particularly long since the general election was later than usual on November 8th. This longer period, independent period, created some confusion among the public. Some years, basically, it's 2 weeks after the primary, and then some years it's 1 week. And I think if you look at the last 4 cycles, 2 times it's been 2 weeks, 2 times it's been 1 week. I think we should pick one or the other. I think the earlier one, for transparency's sake, is better, or we could go even earlier than that. I would have no issue with that. But I think where you're providing 2 weeks, when you have this discrepancy, I don't think that makes sense. So,
Okay. Thank you. Any questions? Keep going.
all right. The next one is a little bit of a bigger bite. This is clarification of residency requirement for voting. Also sponsored by Representative Haroldson. I've had some conversation with the clerks on this. While Wyoming statute defines residence, there is no durational residency requirement set forth in statute. The Wyoming Constitution, and I heard you reading from it on the floor, and you read that portion, it sets forth a very stringent residency requirement, which was struck down by the Wyoming Supreme Court in a case in '73. The Wyoming Supreme Court left open clearly the possibility of a statutory durational residency requirement. And I believe the time has come for us to get this done. This is going to be a complex one, I think. It's going to take a couple meetings, but I think it's going to be very beneficial to the residency of our elections and election security to add clarity on the duration and also on the definition, but more the duration. The definition, I think, is there, but maybe needs some work.
Okay. Any questions? Keep going.
I think that is the ones we submitted. I have comments on the other ones, but I'm not the submitter, so I guess I'll wait for that.
Stand by it. We're really under the gun as far
Yeah.
as it, but
Okay.
we'll try to get you back on. Thank you,
you.
sir. Mr. Chairman, I see the only other elected official I see is the assessors are here. And did you want to address this, Ms. Huxtable? Are there any clerks here? There must be. Oh, come. Do you have anything? Well, please come on up. I thought I was in revenue for a second, I think. Going to the assessors first. Clerk Lee, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Pull it
Deborah
up
Lee,
close,
Laramie-
make sure they can hear you.
Deborah Lee, Laramie County
You gotta
Clerk,
pull that,
representing
can
the
you pull that
Clerks
mic like
Association.
this? Yeah,
Representing the Clerks Association.
perfect.
Thank you, sir. So it's my honor to present our interim study submission on behalf of the County Clerks Association, which is, we call it Elections 101, and it's an introduction to election administration. And we will share how we as election administrators plan, prepare, and conduct elections from voter registration through the certification of the election. We'll explain our processes, protocols, and procedures, demonstrate election equipment, and of course, answer your questions. We feel this session would be a particular benefit to the new members of the committee, as well as an invaluable refresher to the seasoned committee members. Elections, as you know, are complex operations involving multiple tasks, deadlines, personnel, and resources, all of which occur simultaneously throughout the state and involve the majority of the adult citizens of this state. So it's our intent that Elections 101 will provide a good foundation for you in your policymaking decisions.
Good enough. Questions? Do you have more you want to add?
That's it.
All right. We have a question, Mr. Co-Chair.
Yeah, I'm just curious. So some of this will involve demonstration of machines in terms of and process. So where we have our meetings might have an impact on how effective this topic is. Have you thought about that?
Sleep?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, we have. Mhm.
Okay, and one of them, at least one will be in Cheyenne, so we'll definitely be able to see machines in Cheyenne.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And I believe you mentioned Lander and possibly Douglas.
I think that's
Yep,
where we are.
That's exactly right.
We can handle it, Mr.
Okay.
Chairman.
So there are actually machines in every county.
See, this is why we need elections 101.
Yeah.
All right, I just proved the need for the topic. Thank you.
Anybody else?
Thank you. And
Ms.
we'd
Lee?
be happy to take any feedback you have in shaping this.
Thank you very much. We
Thank
really
you.
appreciate it. Look forward to working with you. I think we've got all the elected officials so far, right? So I think it'd be appropriate to go to state agencies. So the Wyoming Public Service Commission, well, let's do I can tell the insurance commissioner, he's biting at the bit. This, for everyone, the two agencies we've traditionally been closest to are the Public Service Commission and the Insurance Commissioner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioner Jeff Rude, Department of Insurance. We have a short bill. We want to clean up, we want to rework and reorganize our definition section involving the definition of insurance transaction. We've just had some input from industry and some questions from consumers on what that encompasses. And as it's written now, it's a little bit vague, and it doesn't allow me the latitude to fix with merely a bulletin. And so that's something we want to address. I think it'll be straightforward and simple. One meeting, 20 minutes, and we'll have something for you. With that, I'll leave you.
Any questions for the insurance commissioner? So usually we have one meeting where we talk about a bill, and then one meeting where we actually, the actual final bill would be in the next meeting. So anybody else? Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you very much. How about the Public Service Commission? Got the whole gang. You can drag a chair up too if you welcome. Mr. Chairman, welcome. How are you?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Very good. Thanks for having us. We have besides topics that are proposed by others, we turned in 2 requests. One for review of the Telecommunications Act, which I should introduce myself. Chris Petrie, I'm at the Public Service Commission.
You're the chairman.
I'm the chairman. We turned in a request for a review of the Telecommunications Act that the sunset was extended on by 2 years. This has been a discussion begun in the previous interim session, and I noticed that Ms. Levin has submitted a more elaborate description of the project, but it's essentially the same project. It's to determine whether there are parts of the Telecommunications Act that have outlived their usefulness, and whether there are parts or new aspects of telecommunications that should be under the commission's purview. And that's I don't have anything more to add to that, but those are complementary proposals.
That sounds very good. And committee and Mr. Co-Chairman, it may be that some of these topics are 2-year interim topics. Understanding we're up against a 2/3 vote to get in. This is obviously something we have to do, is address the sunset that's looming. And so some of these more complicated, especially utility topics, we may see more education the first go around, maybe some ideas, but not really prepare a bill for the next session, carrying it over and then bringing it in the next general session. I think that might be a good use of our time. Anything more, Mr. Petrie? Go ahead.
Yes, noting that you have placed on this list a general electricity topic, and that topic also includes a mention of the net metering arrangement, the statute in Wyoming, and we have proposed a topic there to review the net metering statutes, and particularly to determine whether there are structural issues with the existing statute that might prevent the rate-making process from deriving just and reasonable rates. And so that is a task that I think is pretty much right up the commission's alley, and I think that's worth further discussion. I think that it has been, there's been some excessive controversy on this topic, and I don't think that it's really that difficult.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Co-Chairman.
Yeah, Mr. Co-Chairman, Commissioner Petrie, I have not had the chance to have this topic in front of me personally, but I know that the topic is consistently in front of the legislature. And at the end of the day, the bill never seems to make it to me. How will us studying this over the interim be different than what we've seen in the past? What's going to be different that's going to make it so that the ball moves forward on this one?
And Mr. Co-Chairman, that's a great question. I might point out that this might be the perfect one for the 2-year look, but anyway, Mr. Petrie.
Mr. Chairman, that's a very good point. It could be a longer discussion. We do have the luxury in this case of having a fairly low net metering penetration rate in the state. So we don't have an emergency on our hands, but I do personally, and I've talked to my colleagues specifically about this, but this is a situation that the longer you wait, if there is a problem, the harder and more painful it would be to resolve it. And so this isn't a crisis by any means, because we only have about 1% of customers involved in net metering now. It may vary a bit by utility and by area, but I'd say it's an opportunity that is worth taking advantage of to get ourselves situated so that in the future, when we have a greater amount of net metering, which seems entirely almost a certainty, it is a certainty, I'll just say. Waiting is probably not going to be helpful. It's going to get the more people that are involved in it under the current paradigm, the more difficult it'll be to make any changes that you deem necessary.
Anybody else? Senator Landon.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Just a quick add-on to the commissioner. I think a lot of passion surrounds this issue. And a couple of years ago, the good chairman and I were on the committee, and one afternoon, we literally took testimony for 5 hours. So that's my only caution, is that it can be a time consumer. Appreciate all the words that were just shared, because I think it's spot on, but we do have to be careful with that one.
Anybody else? Anything else for the Public Service Commission? Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you very much. Appreciate all the work you guys are doing. Are there any other state agencies here? Any other state agencies? Mr. Chairman, I think what we might propose now is to go back to our list numerically and catch the ones that are individually sponsored.
Yeah, I think that would work out really nicely.
Okay, so affordable housing, contact Scott Heiner. Anybody want to talk about affordable housing? Anybody? Representative Yen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I also submitted it late, which is why it's on the second sheet that's on the other side of Representative Harshman's.
Okay.
I know that the committee tackled this, I believe, the last interim, not this either this previous one or the last one, and nothing ended up coming out of it. But I do think it's still worth taking a look at. It is a problem, not just in Wyoming, but nationwide. And there are some ideas that we could try to pull from other locations. And I know that even in our last Council of State Governments national conversation, that there were presentations on it. So I think there are a lot of ideas that we could try to pull in that weren't considered in the last interim.
Okay, any questions for Representative Yen? Anybody? And Kelly, are you handling the online? If there's somebody that, if you got to get my attention, just please speak up, okay? Anybody? All right, the next topic is constitutional amendment to regulate campaign contributions. Representative Chestic, please come up. And then after that, just to put you on deck, see, he's got two. And then we've had Sean Taylor and Mr. Majority Leader on an electric topic afterwards. So Representative, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Co-Chairman. Appreciate the opportunity to speak very briefly. I know have a time crunch, so I can be very quick on at least this first one. I think that the first one deals with asking for a constitutional amendment to permit states and Congress to deal with dark money, which is a growing problem in our political system. This should be an easy one, I think an hour or two at most. This was an interim topic last time for all the new members of the committee. It may be a new topic for the new members, but a lot of the continuing members from the Senate side dealt with this. It passed the interim committee with strong vote. It was considered in the Senate. It passed this committee. It passed the committee of the whole in the Senate and then failed on third reading. And all I want to do is I think there's a strong support for this throughout the legislature, I believe. And I think maybe, I know the language is worked on very carefully by several members of the Senate committee here, and I appreciate the hard work over the last interim. I think there may be just another tweak or two that might be enough to get it over the finish line in the Senate. And if we could talk about it in the interim committee for an hour or so, hopefully we'll be able to tweak the language and address whatever that issue was that caused it to fail at the last moment in the Senate. And I think it's a topic that has a lot of popular support. A lot of people, a lot of voters are concerned about dark money, and I think this could be an easy one that should take very little time.
Okay, any questions by the committee? I do want to record should take just about an hour or so. I want to have that recorded.
Because all the work's been done. Most of the work has been done already, so.
Please continue on our next topic.
The second one is more complicated, and this might be a good one for a 2-year study because it's going to take a little time to work through all the issues. But election integrity has been a topic that's been in the public discussion quite a bit. And to me, what election integrity means is that the voters have confidence that elections are being run in a nonpartisan way. And the news media likes to make this out as a fight between me and the current secretary. It's not. I don't believe that at all. I'm hoping that the current secretary would actually be on board with this because it makes sense. To have the elections, the chief election official be somebody who's been elected to a partisan office doesn't make sense. We need to have some nonpartisan, not just the appearance, but the actual nonpartisan supervision of the election system. My proposal is to put the election system under the control of the state canvassing board, which currently has 4 elected officials on it. But at the moment, they're all from one party. And so to make it truly nonpartisan, I would have proposed to amend the state canvassing board to add a 5th member. So we have an odd number, makes it more sense to have an odd number, and make sure that 5th member is from, if a majority of the current board is from the same party, that the 5th member would be from a different party. That way we would be guaranteed to have some kind of nonpartisan board supervising elections, which to me is pure election integrity. How that works, there's some unanswered questions for sure, but that's why I think it's a good study topic. We can talk about how do we do that and how would we select that 5th member. A lot of things still to be talked about, but I think it makes perfect sense. It's good sense to have a nonpartisan organization, a nonpartisan group being the supervision of the election system. So that is my second proposal.
Any questions? Thank you. Anything else you have? Nope. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Co-Chairman, should we give Mr. Secretary a chance? Because
I was just curious. I thought he'd want to respond to that one.
I mean, he's point number 1, so please, Mr. Secretary, welcome again.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I think it goes without saying to some extent, I'm not a big fan of this one. I think it's a divisive topic, and we had a campaign, and you know, the duties in the Secretary of State's office, they're inherent duties. I look at the wall in our office, you know, and it goes back to territorial days. okay? That we had a Secretary of State that managed the elections, even in territory. And, you know, you had a resolution referring to one of them, Chairman Case. There's a history there. There's a tradition. And I think this is looking for a problem that isn't there. And I would ask you not to move forward with this. Thank you.
Any questions for the secretary? Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. The next one I've got is electric utility certified service territories. Sean Taylor. Oh, I didn't see you. Thank you. I'm glad you're here. The floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, joint committee. My name's Sean Taylor on behalf of Wyoming's Rural Electric Cooperatives. Bring this interim topic to you. We worked with Majority Floor Leader Nyman and Senator Steinmetz in the Senate, and a pretty good list of co-sponsors on this bill this year, Senate File 105. Unfortunately, it didn't make it out of the Senate committee, so we decided to see if we could get it as an interim topic. This topic, I won't reiterate everything that's in the write-up that you all have in front of you, but we have these certificated service territories where every utility operates and is allowed to operate and is obligated to operate. Sometimes there are violations of these territorial boundaries. When that happens, usually it's to the detriment of the rural electric cooperatives, which is why we brought this bill this year and would like to have it studied in the interim, give a chance for all stakeholders to get together. I know the estimated time is probably overly optimistic, 2 half-day sessions. But perhaps if all the stakeholders can get together after the first meeting, then we could bring a bill that could be handled in fairly short order on the second time. So I would ask for your all's favorable consideration of this topic.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Any questions for Mr. Taylor? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The next topic I have is abandoned and nuisance buildings with Representative Sherwood. Are we around? Shall we, I'm not seeing anybody. Can we set it aside? Oh, I'm sorry, Representative Yin. You're going to handle that one too.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I'll speak on it. So this is a bill that Representative Sherwood brought, and it actually passed with flying colors through committee. It did end up dying on general file on the crossover time, so it was left over on general file on the last day for committee of the whole on the House of Origin. We had a lot of support for the bill from communities around the state, even ones that Representative Sherwood never reached out to, and they all came out in favor. So I think that this is a worthwhile endeavor to see whether that it can be cleaned up and made into a nice committee bill, and I would advocate for that as an interim topic. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Representative. Any questions for the representative? Thank you very much. The next one is, am I following this right? Home ownership of slot machines. Now, this is the one I've been waiting for. Brantley Pop, is Mr. Pop here? Mr. Pop, is Mr. Pop online? Does anybody know anything about this? Mr. Chairman? Senator Landon, you know about home
I
ownership
only
of
know
slot
that
machines?
at our cabin up in DuBois, we have one that is circa 1905, so I think it would qualify. So if we need to put a bill in place, it wouldn't affect that. But that's the only thing I know about old slot machines. Still works. That's back when it used to be okay to have slot machines in DuBois, Wyoming.
So if I'm reading this proposal, it's just to have the ability to own slot machines for the purpose of as a curiosity or an item. I'm not seeing that there's a gambling aspect to it. Representative Haroldson, thank you. Can you help me?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I'm just going to speak to it. I have a constituent in my area, and I'm spitballing a little bit here, but I do know this is a conversation we've had, that he has collected pinball machines and he's collected all sorts of stuff, but slot machines are one thing he can't have. And for him, it's a deal where they have a token at the door, and the buddies come on over and they hang out and play on the pinball machines and play on not slot machines unless they're old slot machines. And so this would just make that legal from what I'm gathering. Now, no. Well, I guess you could turn it into that, but that would probably, you might have to put some sideboards on it, make sure that all the neighborhood guys aren't there.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Representative. Thank you very much. Convention of States, is Senator Lawson here? Convention of the States, you guys know what that is. You've just been through it, right? So we're all there. Question, take that up again. Task Force for Affordable Housing, Mr. J. Tyler Balance. J. Tyler Balance. Representative Yin, you know anything about this one?
Mr. Chairman, I do not know who Jay Tyler Balance is, but I'm
Task
supportive-
Force for
supportive of-
Affordable Housing. Yes, Ms. Duncan, welcome. Come on up. Help us out.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't know who this is either. However, the topic is very pertinent to my private business. After going through the entire interim, as you well know, having different presentations and nothing really sticking for affordable housing, this is a great idea. Because then you have stakeholders and a few legislators. I don't know what the makeup is or anything, but it really is going to have to come from solutions from the private sector and them decide what can the legislature or what are barriers for that the legislature is in the way or the government's in the way that can be resolved for the state. But most of the innovative ideas and topics and different things are coming from the private sector. And then I do know a lot of issues are things like zoning, permitting, tapping into sewers, things like that, that we heard a little bit about during the interim. So some of those things could be addressed. But for the most part, it really needs to take more time than what we had, and it needs to take some innovative thinking.
Okay, questions for Ms. Duncan? And Ms. Duncan, you see this as the end product would be a bill that creates this task force that the legislature would consider at the next session? Is that what you're thinking? Am I reading this right?
Unless you wanted to, Mr. Chairman, unless you wanted to do a subcommittee and added private people and a few,
Like a working group kind of?
yeah, and it could be just an extension of last year, and just do it like a working group that is voluntary. I mean, that would be better than an actual bill.
Okay, understand. Any questions? Thank you, Ms. Duncan. Thank you very much. I got the next one. We look at House Bill 106, and that was Senator Steinmetz. And I think on your side, I'm trying to remember who the sponsor was. The guy with the beard? Slagle, wasn't that Slagle? Isn't this the eminent domain? I might be wrong. Yeah, it's more moratorium on condemnation of wind collector lines. So is this is the bill the governor vetoed. So, we could certainly look at that. If I recall from the veto message, that was the time frame that was seemed to be the hitch for the governor. So it might be worthwhile to look at that again and maybe get it in something he could support. So there's that one. Examining potential abuse of Wyoming LLCs. Of course, our good secretary brought that up. This is Representative Stith. I did have a bill in the area that required if an LLC is owned by a trust, that there be more disclosure than in other types of LLCs. But that is that bill, and that fits in with some of the stuff that the good secretary was saying. Then we have proposed topic, newspaper publication requirements. This committee has addressed publication requirements periodically, not weekly. It's not a daily, but periodically we have addressed. That's supposed to be a joke, you guys. That's really funny. Okay. But basically, this topic from Representative Chadwick is to remove the newspaper publication requirements. Any discussion? Mr. Chadwick's not here. Who's here? Oh, you're here. There he is.
He's here.
I don't recognize bald men. They all look alike to me. Go ahead, Representative Chadwick. Sorry. Go ahead.
You pretty much addressed the issue already. Yeah, getting complaints from cities, towns, counties.
Yeah.
And at least in my area, that this is cost prohibitive. Costs them a lot of money. And they'd really like to see those costs go down or go away.
Fair enough. Anybody else? The Wyoming Press Association, I think, is that you, Mr. Downing?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. In your inboxes, you should have an email from the executive director of the Wyoming Press Association. Granted, we're in the talking interim topics, and so we definitely would be happy to visit with the proposer of the topic. However, as far as rising in opposition to the topic, we had the legislation earlier this year that was talking about streamlining that process. I think we were close to there as far as having something that's acceptable for local governments in addition to members of the press association and other media outlets. In terms of the time dedicated to the topic, if you do decide to take up this topic, we would like the opportunity to have some discussions on archival level data security, which is required when you are doing public notices and providing those resources that go into ensuring that the public record is maintained and that it's not tampered with. And so as far as that branch, we were close to a compromise. We definitely would be interested in continuing that dialogue. I think it would take a little bit more than 2 to 3 hours of committee time if there is a decision to go down this path.
Thank you very much. Any questions for Mr. Downing? Thank you, Mr. Downing. The next topic is this is the same day school board member. We talked about that earlier, but Secretary discussed that. The next one is examination of potential of abuse of corporate entity formation. Again, that was covered by the Secretary. Special district vacancy covered by the Secretary. Unaffiliated petition filing period covered by the Secretary. The swearing in again of the school boards, and then clarification of residency requirement, clarification of residency requirement for voting. I think that's all. I'm on page 13, and that starts with the bill about ESG.
Mr. Chairman.
Unless there's any questions before, Representative Knapp.
Thank you. On the ESG, this was sponsored for Representative Tarver. I don't believe he's here right now, so.
You get to go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. As best as I can explain it, it's as ESG starts freezing up more and more availability for cash flow for our legacy services for coal, oil, and gas, that we would partake in expanding our bonding program, which would allow for possible lines of credit or similar to farm credit services and loans. So that's the explanation of it.
Questions for Representative Knapp? Okay, thank you very much. Representative Newsom, open primaries.
This was brought to me. I'm hoping.
Ms. True is here. Do you want to yield to her?
Yes, I do.
Ms. True.
Chairman Case, Chairman Olson, members of the committee, I'm Joanne True from Natrona County. Thank you for your work this session and for your time considering interim topics today. I'll be brief. There have been a lot of discussion over the last two interims and again this session about how Wyoming structures its elections, who can vote, when they can vote, and how and when they need to affiliate in order to vote. This committee has also noted how our current system impacts unaffiliated voters. Wyoming is one of the states where registered independent or unaffiliated voters are projected to become the second largest group of voters in the state by 2035. Several discussions on crossover voting have centered on the reality that requiring unaffiliated voters to affiliate before candidates have even filed for office. One option to achieve many of the goals expressed by committee members, nonpartisan groups, and voters alike is to shift to open primaries. With open primaries, when it is time to choose our leaders, every voter is invited to participate. As the clerks have noted in hearings on several bills in the 2023 general session and the 2022 interim, Wyoming voters vote for people. They know their neighbors and they want to support them in local races like sheriff or coroner, even if those races are partisan. An open primary would ensure that Wyoming voters can vote for the people they want to. I'm happy to stand for any questions.
Questions for Ms. True? Questions for Ms. True? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Representative Ottman, is Ms. Klopfenstein, did I mess that up? It has to do with the topic of runoff elections, and would you be willing to speak to it, or anybody else? How about if you put your mic on and give us your thoughts, if you don't mind. It's page 15.
Oh, okay. I can just tell you what she said because I haven't had time to look at this. Would that be all right?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you, Mr.
I feel bad
Chairman.
that she's not here, so
Yes,
absolutely.
Yes, okay. Runoff, as we were just hearing, elections are extremely important in the state and in the country. But for this particular topic, runoff elections, important, majority of the voters are of one major party, yet there are many variations of these philosophies. In the past, oh, I remember this, yeah. In the past, crossover and defective votes in the primary eventual winner may have only received a minimal amount of the total vote, and yet because the vote was splintered among many candidates, that person becomes the standard bearer going into the general. Runoff elections, not ranked choice, would allow for a candidate to receive 50 plus 1% of the votes cast in order to be the candidate of the people. A change to the Wyoming Constitution would be necessary to make this happen. A majority of the voters in Wyoming, she felt, would vote for this as well. Plus, it would be really nice for Wyoming to be able to be an active participant in the national convention by moving the primary to earlier in the spring and summer. So she didn't think that it would be that much time. I don't know that that
Gotcha.
is true, but is that good?
That's perfect. Thank
Okay,
you. Any
thank you.
questions for Ms. Representative Ottman? Thank you. And then you have the next one too, private property tax relief. On page, am I doing that right, aren't? Yes.
Okay, yes, I did submit this. Basically, my feeling was, is I listed about 16 bills that we had for private property tax relief, reorganization, up, down, and all around. And I thought it may be a good idea, since these were brought by legislators that had apparently, or I would think, that they were vetted and talked about and felt that they were important and possibilities, that it would be a good idea to look at them and just to see if there is some commonality or reasonableness within them. That was something that we could do so that we wouldn't have all of these bills every year, and that it might help. So that was my topic.
And did you mean to submit it to corporations and not to revenue?
I did submit it to corporations. I had not.
This is corporations. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I used to be the chairman of revenue, and I thought I was in the revenue committee for a meeting a minute. But I'm wondering, does it fit well with corporations, or should it be better in revenue?
Well, Mr. Chairman, thank you. Why revenue?
Well, they're
Because of the money?
the taxes. But
Okay.
now I understand. I just looked back and I see Ms. Henson is here from the Department of Revenue. I overlooked you earlier, but and you're welcome to address the committee if you wish. But okay.
I guess it was because it was my concern. That's why
Yeah.
I put it there.
Oh, I
But
see.
Okay.
Yeah. You might check with the Revenue Committee, and the committee, we can take it up, but I think it'd be unusual.
Okay. Well,
But
then, so, excuse me, Mr. Chairman.
yeah,
Probably they've already met with their topics, I would think so.
well, actually, in the very end, the topics don't have to be submitted until it's several weeks out from now.
Okay.
Yeah, it's up at the end of March. This is kind of our internal deadlines. So you got still time to work this out. Mr. Co-Chairman, did you have something?
Yeah, I just
you.
agree. I understand Representative Ottman bringing it, you brought it to this committee because you're on this committee, so that made sense. But I do think it fits under revenue, so I'd encourage you to work with Chairman Harshman down at the end of the table to see if you can't get it on their interim list. Just because we could take it up, but we've got 42 submissions here, so we're already gonna have a hard enough time.
Anybody? Okay. Non-discrimination. We've got Ms. Duncan and Representative Yen. And then on deck, bias motivated crime, that'll be Ms. Duncan. And then Next, after that is workers' compensation, so you'll be up after that. Okay, Ms. Duncan, we'll start with you on non-discrimination and then just take us right into bias-motivated crime.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and committee. The non-discrimination, I'll just go super fast for you. We have several communities across the state that have already passed a portion or something similar to this in their own communities. The state is silent, so we really need to have some consistency across the state. And it's also a very good economic driver. You know, we have businesses that want to come into our state, and when we don't have a policy for our equality state, being our state motto, it's kind of hard to convince them that we are very friendly. So that's what I have to say, and very quickly on non-discrimination. And the two.
Do you want to
people-
just cover the next one and then we'll jump to these two?
Okay, I think they're doing non-discrimination as well, so. Okay, or non-biased crime, or biased crime, that is similar. However, there's over 40+ businesses that have come to me and asked me that, you know, why are we not doing this? There's several corporate structures that require that they hit certain pillars, and this is one of those pillars that some of the corporations are required to have, and when they operate here in our state, because they're operating in all states. We have local businesses and local entities, which you'll hear from, that also are requesting this. And again, it's an economic driver. You know, if we have this on our books, we have businesses that will come in. It just makes sense. We are one of 4 states left in the entire nation that has not passed this for biased crime, and we are one of 19 states that hasn't passed non-discrimination. That's sad.
Thank you very much. Any questions? Ms. Burlingame.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, committee. Thanks for taking the time today. I'll just back up what my good friend, Ms. Duncan, said, and just add the caveat that we have brought this before, and if we didn't have something new to offer, and if really important factors hadn't shifted, then we wouldn't be bringing it to you again. We don't want to waste anybody's time. We don't want to go over well-trodden path if nothing has changed. So what significantly has changed for us in the past is that we've gotten some national movement, particularly from red states like ours, on passing non-discrimination that really encompasses and has been done in partnership with pretty conservative religious faiths. In the past, we have come to a brick wall and not been able to overcome some of the obstacles. And how do we balance every Wyomingite's right to religious liberty with the right to also have non-discrimination in the public forum? And we think we've done that. We think we've got significantly, we've worked with the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. They have been pivotal in crafting this language with us and finding a way that balances religious freedom and the rights of the marketplace. So I think we could have a really good conversation. I think that you'll be getting some information from us on how this impacts businesses. We have a number of large corporations. That's why we're in front of this company who've come in. You'll hear more from Amber about that, and have said that this is important to them. And I think that the 2 statistics that I hope that you look at from this business-friendly initiative is that convention events and leisure tourism are more competitive when it's clear that everyone is welcome. Tourism is our number 2 economic driver in the state, and this is a really straightforward thing that we can do. It's a solution that was within our ability to solve, and make sure that people know that Wyoming is open for business. We're a great place to visit. We're a great place for your workers to thrive, and I hope that that's a conversation that we can have thoughtfully over the interim. Thanks,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Chairman.
Any questions? Thank you. And yes, I'm sorry, I don't know you. Please.
I'm Amber Leba, the Vice President of the Greater Cheyenne Chamber of Commerce.
How do you
We
do?
also manage the Wyoming Retail Association and the Wyoming Business and Industry Federation. And this is definitely a priority item for them as well. Just quickly, just not to duplicate anything that's been said, we definitely do hear it from business inquiring about coming into our state. There are concerns about protections for their employees coming in. So we definitely view this as an economic development issue. So I would stand for any questions.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Of course.
This is a tough forum, you know, we've got so much to do, but questions? Thank you all. Thank you very much. Next one will be the workers' compensation from the trial lawyers. And on deck would be Gail Simmons, major and minor political parties. Ms. Shaner, welcome. You and I have been doing this for a while. You and I have been doing this for a while.
You are very right about that, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, Chairman Case, Chairman Olson, and members of the committee. Workers' compensation is an issue that we've passed a number of bills about over the course of the last 10 years, but we haven't spent very much time looking at some of the major issues in the workers' comp system. We had a bill this year, and I'm not certain how I pressed send without the bill on my submission, but 269 was a bill that dealt with expenses for attorneys representing workers in contested hearings, and it didn't make it to be heard. But it is an issue. The Office of Administrative Hearings has changed their policy on providing for those expenses. And so it's making representing those workers extremely difficult. There seems to be confusion within the workers comp division on why this change was made and looking at ways to codify what's been the practice until the last 3 or 4 years. So we would love to look at that issue. A number of our attorneys are having some concerns with other definitions and would like some clarifying language. Even the word injury seems to have a little bit of issue and clarity. And we thought while we were looking at those issues, we might as well look at maybe a couple of the benefits. The death benefit for a single person with no benefits in Wyoming is only $10,000, which means that parents who've lost a young person, which we've had a number of those in the last few years, can't even bury their son or daughter with that kind of a benefit. So we hoped we'd look at benefits a little bit. We're always looking at coverage, who should be covered under the workers' comp system. Some of our lawyers would like paraprofessionals to be included, and I know you've heard a lot of reference to including retail under workers' comp. So if we were going to look at workers' comp, there are many issues within that topic that we could look at. I know Representative Wiley would like to look at premium and rates. So perhaps it could all be tied together. I'm happy to answer questions.
Questions for Ms. Shaner? Have you shopped this to the Labor Committee?
I'm shopping wherever anybody might like to consider it. Would be
Anybody
excellent.
serve on Labor? And Senator Barlow? Have you guys had your interim meeting yet? Okay. Wherever it'll stick, right? Questions for Ms. Shaner? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Let's see. Senator Barlow, annexation vote requirement with Representative Stivar. Oh, I'm sorry, Ms. Simmons. I apologize. You are next. You're right. Take it away. Keep me on track.
Chairman, I don't care, but you said my name, so I came up. I have a handout, Mr. Chairman, both chairmans. It's on the second page. This is really about ongoing conversations around that really tie into the political parties, and in particular, the question of First Amendment rights and protections of the political parties as currently private versus semi-private. This actually ties into some of the other topics that you have. So I don't know that this would need to be standalone, but I think that it is critical for you all to understand and to be provided, because I'm sure that the LSO just really loves somebody to come up here and give them work. But the kind of the underpinnings of the Supreme Court decisions around state engagement with the political parties and vice versa, and then a statutory review of those areas, particularly in Title 22, that are impacted by that. And so I don't see a huge amount of discussion on this so much as having a consolidated report available to you as the various topics come up and as individual bills come up that you can refer to, rather than trying to pick through it on an individual basis. And I stand for questions.
Questions for Ms. Simmons? So you're thinking that, other states interface with political parties differently than we do in Title 22. Is that one of your points, basically?
Absolutely. And there have been a series of court cases and decisions made by the Supreme Court in these areas. So when the conversation comes to, well, for example, on our primary elections and those being nominating elections, the fact is that we're paying as a state for those as primary nominating elections. And yet, in many cases, those kinds of nominations are done in caucuses. So you heard another topic that had to do with open primary. And so, they all start tying together and understanding kind of the underpinnings of what the legal restrictions are and requirements. And of course, anytime, if I were to oversimplify, that you give privileges to a political party, it's usually because you usually end up putting some restrictions on them as well. So understanding how those tie together so that you're not pulling out the restrictions and leaving the privileges or vice versa.
Thank you. Any questions? Thank you, Ms. Simmons. Next. Yeah, why don't you? You're here. Go ahead. If that's acceptable, everybody, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, the first page on that is election integrity. It ties into the Elections 101 that the clerks had. It's actually more pointed. They, as I understand it, they want to provide you with kind of how do they do the work. The fact is that election integrity is actually the responsibility of our 23 county clerks. They administer the elections. Because of the last 2 years and a lot of kerfuffle and all about election integrity, the idea here, again, maybe not so much discussion, but some, as long as I'm giving work out to the clerks on doing a comprehensive review of the risks associated with elections. The election security bill that passed, I think did a long ways, but by having a comprehensive look at it, identifying where any potential gaps have been closed off, and if there are any additional that need to be addressed. So again, it's a comprehensive look at this. And you notice that I put on here county clerks, SOS, political parties, and public. I know that there is an individual who's making the rounds of talking about the lack of integrity we have. And I think that the clerks should have the opportunity to look at their processes, identify if there's any issues, and address, even if there's not complaints, the jabber that comes up so that we can shut it down and do it in a way that they, as the experts, can address.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Simmons. Questions for Ms. Simmons? Thank you very much. Is Representative Stivar here? And Senator Barlow, I'll go to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So as you recall, we had two bills that dealt with annexation. Passed one of them through the body, and the other one got stalled out in the Senate committee. I committed to Representative Stivar that the annexation issue, that I would bring it to the committee, and particularly when it's annexations that are initiated by the municipality. There are annexations, as you know, Mr. Chairman, that are initiated by the landowners. That's a little different. These are municipality-initiated annexations, and I think it's really a process. I think timing and process thing, not whether we do it or not, but how it's done, and can we do it in a more open way so the folks can have a better understanding. Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions for the senator? Thank you. And then Senator, you've also got, if you jump over the next one we've already done.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
We've got boards and commissions.
The boards and commissions one, as you know, we actually just passed the bill on concurrence about per diem for boards and commissions. So that one's maybe out of the way, although there needs to be some cleanup. The qualifications, as some of you may know, if you deal with the executive branch very much, finding folks, particularly with partisan needs, i.e. Republican, Democrat, et cetera, within some of these boards is getting more and more challenging. and professional qualifications in some cases too. So I think it's just an overall review of, is it necessary to have these partisan designations and some of the other items that come up with certain boards. So just a continuity between the boards. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. Questions for the senator? Thank you very much. The next topic is proposed senior citizens districts. I have Senator Boner as a contact person. Was there someone that was joining with Senator Boner on that?
It's me, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, Senator Boner's on the Corporations Committee. He's not new. I have really bad peripheral vision, and if there's a bald guy in between, it just blinds me like crazy. So I'm sorry, and that's a stupid joke, and I apologize. Senator Boner, please.
Anyways, pretty simple, straightforward. As many of you know, we had a senior citizen district related bill here today, and part of that discussion, I did promise some other senior citizen district boards, not in my area, to bring this up to as an interim topic. I think that, if I understand the concern or that they want to look at some of the procedures they have for instituting boards. They want to look at what's required to continue a board and continue a district. And I think they're frankly looking for some stability there instead of having their district be up for reapproval every 4 years. So this is just me doing what I said I was going to do. And that's about the long and short of it.
Thank you very much. Questions for Senator Boner? Thank you very much, Senator Boner. How about Senator Case? Is Senator Case here today? Senator Case? I don't see Senator Case. He's out to lunch. That is the Telecommunications Act rewrite. We've already talked about that. And Ms. Levin, did you have anything you wanted to add to that? The commission touched on it a little bit. I think you were here. You and Mr. Pickard, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Jody Levin on behalf of Charter and Verizon. I'd also like to point out that I did coordinate with my industry colleagues. So this study request is supported by the Wyoming Telecommunications Association and Lumen. Mr. Pickard is here. I don't have much to add in terms of what the Public Service Commission already referenced and you did, Mr. Chairman. But we would like this to be a 2-year interim topic. We'd like to start this first year with some just educational issues on how the different sectors are regulated, how the federal act interplays with Wyoming statute. And then there was a request yesterday before the Minerals Committee from the Wyoming Business Council to review the state broadband office. We're glad to work with whatever committee should that topic move forward, but there may need to be some coordination with this committee if those topics aren't kind of looped into a broader communications context.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Levin. Questions? Mr. Pickard.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Dave Pickard, representing Lumen, and we fully support the industry's approach to looking at this over the next 2 years. As you recall, in both the interim, we feel that it's time to really take a look at the act and modernize it. We haven't done that in about 16 years. So certainly encourage the committee to go ahead and do that over the next 2 years.
Thank you, sir. Any questions? Thank you both very much. The next proposed topic is regulatory reform. It's came through the governor's office, and you all got, this was handed out early from Drew Perkins, Chief of Staff. Major effort to review and revise regulations to improve effectiveness and efficiency, to reduce regulatory burdens. And they're hoping that each standing committee should be authorized to accept requests from the administration as we work through agency regulation to review and reassess statutes that impose undue complexity or require unnecessary or burdensome regulations. So I think there would be a commitment from this committee to the agencies that we work with to work on that. Are there any other comments on that? Okay, then thank you very much. Urban renewal and tax increment financing, Ken Gill. Aha, now I know why you're here. Ms. Huxtable, welcome. Assessor Huxtable.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I am here because Mr. Gill could not be here.
Okay.
The assessors have been involved in some conversations about urban renewal and tax increment financing. And we've got some municipalities out there that are trying to use this tool that's in Title 15, Chapter 9, to help their jurisdictions. And they've come to the assessors, and we've discovered, or we feel like there's just a lot of old language in those statutes. And it's caused some confusion and some misunderstanding, and we are certainly not the experts on that. So we would hope that this could be a topic moving forward. As my colleague says, it may not be in your community, but it's coming. The conference call we had, we started out with 1 or 2 people, and we've got several counties involved that have municipalities that are talking about this. And so we feel it's an important topic that needs to be addressed to get the statutes in line so that these municipalities can move forward. Just as a point, he said, make sure you tell them it's not a tax increase or decrease.
Right.
It deals with the distribution of the taxes. So just some clarification is why he brought this, Mr. Chairman.
Anybody? And are you shopping this to revenue too?
Mr. Chairman, I do not believe that he did, but I don't know that for sure, so.
I can see the revenue chairman is thinking about this, so.
Okay.
All right, any questions? Thank you very much, Ms. Huxtable. Next topic was insurance terms. We already had from the insurance commissioner. So next one is revised unclaimed property act from the treasurer's office. Mr. Robertson, is he here? Please come up. Thank you. Welcome. Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Co-Chairman, members of the
You got
committee.
that microphone on? It's got to have a green light and you get it close to you.
We're good.
There you go.
Thank you. Bill Pilger, General Counsel, State Treasurer's Office. With me is Jeff Robertson, Administrator of Unclaimed Property. As you know, we brought this bill last year. It was an interim topic, but we did work with OSO. We ended up having a bill, but it got late. It was late to the committee, and it's a pretty substantial bill. So essentially, we just ran out of time. In a nutshell, our Unclaimed Property Act was adopted in 1993 based on the 1981 Uniform Act. So it's over 40 years old at this point. Consequently, it doesn't include a number of things, certainly virtual currency, as new as that is, but even gaming accounts. It doesn't even include tax-deferred retirement accounts, Roth accounts, other tax-deferred accounts, health savings accounts, and so on. So updating it is certainly what we're looking for. But we also, maybe I shouldn't say complaints, but requests for a streamlined process for small claims. We'd like to get that in there, adjust dormancy periods, and also would include confidentiality and security of information. Again, things that aren't in our existing acts. So our goal here is to essentially bring our act up to current.
Okay, thank you. Questions? Questions? And did you want to add anything? We're good. Thank you very much. This is the next topic. This is a really important topic. It's going to involve a lot of field work. Mr. Mosier, come up here. You want to talk about, I don't know that you're the right, I don't know if you're the advocate. Mr. Gopian, are you the advocate?
Mr. Chairman, I am an advocate.
Okay, so you represent the
But
Wyoming.
I do not. You might see if Michelle is online. She
Do we have-
lives in Sheridan. I doubt she made the trip.
Actually, I'm speaking for Michelle.
You're speaking for? Okay, good. Go ahead. Mr. Mosier.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And then I guess I'm not speaking for Michelle. Mike Mosier, Wyoming State Liquor Association, but we were texting. She was unable to be here. And I do know the issue pretty well, and we've been working with Mr. Agopian. This is answer to a bill you might have seen, Senate File 64, this last session to deal with this issue. I have members that are malt beverage wholesalers. We have members that are microbreweries, and we stand with our members. In other words, we want to address this issue, but we want to address it in a way that it works out for everyone. The vast majority of my members are not affected by this. Let me real quickly point out that there are two different kinds of franchise laws generally, and about 20% of Title 12 is beer franchise law or wholesaler law. The retailers that this wouldn't affect, retailers have a franchise law that says if I have a retail liquor license, it is against Wyoming statute for me to buy something that my wholesaler won't carry or at a lower price from somewhere else. I'm in a lock. But this, however, deals with a wholesale tier of the three-tiered system, where if you're a microbrewery, you contract with a wholesaler to distribute your product. However, you can't get out of it. There's a recourse, and I think it's through the wholesaler, but it's darn near impossible, and I don't think it's ever successfully been used. We love our wholesalers, we love our microbrewers, but the problem is if you sign that contract, unless you die or go out of business, the contract is in effect. I first heard about this problem about 3 years ago. It's kind of come to a head. Wholesalers are working with the microbrewers. We're kind of like Switzerland here. We think that there is a solution, whether it's barrel-based, whether it's a carve-out for Wyoming microbreweries. Franchise law was originally written to protect the big little guys from the big guys being the breweries. And now it's kind of flipped around. You've got little microbreweries that are hoping to expand their product. And if they sign with a wholesaler that doesn't like their product or thinks they're ugly and their mom dresses them funny, there's no way out of it, or a very little way out of it. And I'm not dissing my wholesale friends. I just think there's a solution, and I think Mr. Gopin would agree, where all sides can kind of get what they want. This is not a huge topic. I think whether it's a working group or whether it's a minor topic, because I think the answer is there, we just need to figure out the right language. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I'll take any questions.
We're getting real short on time, everybody. We've got about 10 minutes left. So Mr. Gopin.
I'll be very short, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. I do agree with Mr. Mosier. The marketplace has changed in our three-tier system. I think looking at this topic would open that door to understanding what that solution is. But candidly, we don't believe that this is a topic where the committee would need to spend much time at all. It's our intent to work privately with the Craft Brewers Guild. So I represent, forgive me, the Wyoming Beer Distributors Association. We intend to work during the second quarter of this year privately with the Wyoming Brewers Guild to see if we can find that resolution. We would love to have the opportunity at your third meeting.
bring it back.
To bring it back. We've spoken with Senate File 64 as prime sponsor. You know, she would be supportive of that too, leaving the door open for committee sponsorship if this committee found a way under its approved topics, you know, assuming that liquor comes up in some form or fashion. But I think we're on that path right now. To bring a solution to this committee.
Any
quickly.
questions? Committee, I think this is an important topic. Take a lot of field work out there in the brewery world. So really think we ought to be there. Thank you both very much.
Mr. Chairman, we certainly could do tours.
Yeah. Okay. The electricity issues facing Wyoming. We heard a little bit about this from the PSC. It's a huge issue, but it's one of these 2-year things, I think. But it's unbelievable what's happening in the electricity world. When I first started, it was telecom that was the big fun and things, but electricity is where things are changing, and I hope we would spend some time learning about that as we move forward. Senator Scott.
Yeah, I think that is one of the most important things that we're looking at is this electricity thing. It's going to be more than a little complicated because you've got to look into what's happening to the reliability in the grid with the increasing number of renewables. You've got to look at, is the multi-state protocol that governs some of the rates, is that still a viable way of doing things? If it isn't, what do we do about it? What are the implications for reliability spreading to the co-ops and the smaller electric companies in this state, if we have trouble on the West Coast? This is the absolute key to a lot of our future here.
Thank you, Senator Scott. Anybody else? Thank you very much. Next topic is Wyoming Telecommunications Act. We covered that earlier. Next one is net metering review and update, also from the PSC. We covered that earlier. The next topic is something I brought. It's called outdoor lighting. A lot of states have implemented restrictions and tried to implement more night sky friendly outdoor lighting. And it's been a huge boon for places like Tucson, and there are local ordinances. It's clear that municipalities can do this, but without planning and zoning, it doesn't seem that counties can do this. So that's why I'm throwing it out. Happy to answer any questions about that. If none, we'll go to the next one, which is Senator Landon. Go through Joanne True.
Mr. Chairman, just real quickly, I'll cover a couple of, I've got one at the very end.
Go ahead.
Out in the hallway during the session, visiting with several folks, lots of constituents, and really appreciate Ms. True being willing to write up what we talked about. There's a couple of issues that are kind of residuals from the campaign that we just completed, Mr. Chairman, that I get asked about all the time in my hometown. And one is, why can't we find out where the money's coming from in the political campaigns? And then the other one is just regarding the primary elections again, and that is, shouldn't we have some residency requirement for the primary election? We don't have any as it stands today, and I've had a lot of concern from a lot of folks. That's a quick one. Ms. Drew's here too. Appreciate all her work to write this up. She wrote it up a lot better than I would have, so.
Ms. True, do you want to address the committee?
I don't have any comments to include, but I'll stand for any questions.
Okay, committee, questions for either? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The next one I have is proposed special district issues with Mark Pepper. I've got, hi, Mr. Pepper, how are you? Mr. Winnie.
Mr. Chairman, Bill Winnie, Sublette County. Mr. Pepper asked me to speak. He didn't intend to come. He and I talked about this at some length over the last couple of weeks at the behest of Senator Boner. He has some serious concerns of the inner workings and hidden mechanisms of special districts. His particular, he represents some 300 or 400. And I share his issues and intend to work with him. Subject to your questions, thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Winnie?
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Landon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to add on to Mr. Winnie's conversation, we did have a bill that passed through the House regarding special districts. And it ran into some trouble in the Senate, having been the last bill on a Friday. And so just wanted to add to that. But anyway, thanks, Mr. Winnie.
Thank you. Any questions? Thank you all. Thank you, Mr. Winnie. I think that covers everything on the list that I have. Go ahead. What, you want to take it?
Mr. Co-Chairman, we have a couple late entries. We have proposed interim topic, length of election cycle from May to November, and special elections, statewide offices, Representative Harshman.
Thank you. Yeah, I was just about an hour late on that deal, but generally we've allowed the committee to talk about these. And so
Sure.
just really, Mr. Chairman, thanks for hearing this. Just, I think the length of the election cycle, where we sign up by the end of May and then it's whatever, third Tuesday, I guess, in August. And some states are longer, some are shorter. I don't know. I just think this is, you talk to people who aren't, candidates. I don't know. I just sometimes wonder if we can look at shortening that a little bit. Maybe move everything back a couple weeks. That's just a thought. I think people get tired of hearing from us, frankly. I think it drags on too long, and I think some states are much shorter, some are longer, as I said. But what works in Wyoming? I don't think it's broke, but I think it's something to kind of talk about, And the other one was really the special elections for the legislature and statewide offices, the way we used to do it in our original constitution, did it for years like that. And we could go back to that. We currently have special elections for the governor and for the U.S. House of Representatives. And then we've done away with special elections for state. Well, that's why, why we had the first woman governor was a special election. But, and other statewide offices. And, and just before this last election, 4 of the top 5 electeds, not the current 5, but 4 of the top 5, I think were appointed either to their office or their first elected office. And I think you get into that whole thing, who picks who gets appointed. And, a lot of the precinct people are appointed. And I think, and there's statistics on that. I just think, particularly now in this day and age, technology and things move faster, putting the power back to the people the way we used to do it in this state until the 1940s. I think we took it away from the legislature. But anyway, I just think that's worth talking about.
Thank you.
We have vacancies. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Representative. Any questions for the representative? Okay, we're at the end, but Mr. Co-Chairman, I think it'd be a good idea if we allow all the members to kind of think about this, put a list of topics, and understand that when we go to Management Council, we want a broad fishing license, so we would most likely put things together to get a bigger topic, like elections itself could encompass a lot of different things. So understand, we need, a few broad things rather than a whole bunch of specific things, but there may be some important specific ones. And we can just put on our list and then get the list back to the chairman, and you're welcome to share the list with everybody else. That's not a secret or anything. We can see how we can try to move this forward, if that's acceptable.
Works for me, Mr. Co-Chairman.
Okay, we're going back at 2, you're going back at 2.
Yep.
Can I ask the Senate committee to stay? And Ms. Russell, would you come up, we got to talk to you about something. Maybe we could come